The fiancé cut the maid's toddler's dress in front of everyone. Then the billionaire arrived. Grace had worked for the Cole family for almost 8 years. She was a quiet woman with strong hands and a heart that never seemed to run out of patience. She cooked, cleaned, ironed shirts at midnight, and never once complained. But the person she loved most in this world was not her job. It was her daughter, Amara. Amara was 6 years old. She had big brown eyes, 2 puffy pigtails tied with yellow ribbons, and a laugh that could fill an entire room. Everyone who met her said the same thing. "That child is going to break hearts one day." Grace would just smile and pull her daughter close, because to her, Amara was already the most beautiful thing she had ever made. Tonight was a big night at the Cole mansion. It was Vanessa's birthday. Vanessa was engaged to Mr. Richard Cole, a billionaire who owned half the shipping ports on the East Coast. Richard was away on business that week, closing a deal overseas, but he had arranged everything for Vanessa before he left. The caterers, the flowers, the string quartet playing softly near the pool. He wanted her to feel like a queen, even in his absence. Grace had been given one simple job that night: keep the household running and keep Amara close since the babysitter had canceled last minute. Grace almost said no. She almost asked a neighbor to watch Amara instead. But something in her heart told her to bring her daughter along. Maybe it was a mother's instinct. Maybe it was fate setting the stage. Before the guests arrived, Grace dressed Amara in a small red frock, the one Amara called her princess dress. It was simple, nothing expensive, bought on sale 2 years ago. But on Amara it looked like something from a fairy tale. Grace tied the ribbons in her hair, kissed her forehead, and told her, "Stay close to Mommy tonight, baby, be good." Amara nodded with that gap-toothed smile and said, "I'll be the best girl, Mommy." If only Grace had known what that red dress was about to cause. The guests began arriving around 7, women in diamonds, men in tailored suits. Laughter echoed through the marble hallways. Vanessa stood at the center of it all, wearing a shimmering gold gown, her hair perfectly curled, her makeup flawless. She looked stunning, and she knew it. Vanessa had built her entire identity around being the most beautiful woman in every room she walked into. That was her currency. That was her power. But tonight something shifted. It started small. A guest bent down near the kitchen entrance and said, "Oh my goodness, look at this little angel." Another woman gasped and pulled out her phone to take a picture. "She is the cutest thing I have ever seen. Look at those eyes." A group of women gathered around Amara, complimenting her dress, her smile, her hair ribbons. One elderly woman even said, loud enough for half the room to hear, "Forget the models, this child right here is the real beauty of the night." People laughed warmly. Amara giggled and spun in her red dress, delighted by all the attention. Grace stood nearby, beaming with pride, wiping a tear from the corner of her eye. This was one of those moments a mother remembers forever. But across the room, Vanessa's smile began to fade. She watched as more and more guests drifted toward the kitchen doorway, cameras flashing, voices rising in excitement, all directed at a 6-year-old girl in a simple dress. Her own birthday party, her own night. And somehow the maid's daughter was stealing the spotlight. Vanessa's jaw tightened. Her fingers curled around her champagne glass a little too hard. She forced a smile as more guests walked past her without a second glance, chasing after the little girl instead. Someone even said, "Vanessa, you should let this cutie be in your next photo shoot," and laughed. Vanessa laughed too, but her eyes had turned cold. Something ugly was waking up inside her. She excused herself and walked toward the kitchen, weaving through the crowd, her golden heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. Guests parted for her, still smiling, still talking about the beautiful child in red. Vanessa stopped a few feet from Amara, staring down at her like she was studying an insect under a microscope. "Well, well," Vanessa said, her voice syrupy sweet but with a razor hidden underneath. "Aren't you just the star of the show tonight?" Amara looked up innocently and smiled. "Thank you, Miss Vanessa, I like your dress too." A few guests chuckled at the sweetness of it, but Vanessa's smile did not reach her eyes. Grace, sensing the tension, quickly stepped forward. "Ma'am, I'm sorry if she's in the way. I can take her to the back room." "No, no," Vanessa said, raising a hand. "Let her stay. Let everyone keep enjoying the little show." There was a strange edge in her voice that made Grace's stomach twist. She had worked in this house long enough to know that tone. It was the tone Vanessa used right before she did something cruel. Vanessa turned toward a nearby table, where a pair of scissors sat beside the gift-wrapping station, left over from opening party favors. She picked them up slowly, almost lazily, twirling them once in her fingers as she turned back around. The room grew quiet. A few guests noticed the scissors and exchanged confused glances. "You know," Vanessa said, crouching slightly in front of Amara, "this dress is very pretty. Did your mommy make it?" Amara shook her head. "Mommy bought it for me. It's my favorite." Vanessa smiled wider. "Is that so?" And then, without warning, without hesitation, Vanessa reached out and grabbed the hem of Amara's red frock and cut into it with the scissors. The sound sliced through the room louder than any scream. Snip! A piece of fabric fell to the marble floor. Amara froze. Her big brown eyes went wide with confusion, then filled instantly with tears. She didn't understand what had happened. One second she was being told how pretty she looked, and the next, a grown woman was cutting her favorite dress in front of everyone. "Wait," Amara whimpered, backing away. "That's my dress, Mommy, that's my dress." Snip! Vanessa cut again, this time along the sleeve, her expression eerily calm, almost enjoying it, as gasps rippled through the crowd. Grace let out a scream and rushed forward. "Stop! What are you doing? Stop it right now." Vanessa straightened up, holding the scissors loosely at her side, looking almost proud of herself, as if she had just made a brilliant point. "I'm simply fixing the problem," she said coldly. "This dress was distracting everyone from the actual reason for tonight's party. It's my birthday, not hers." The room fell into a stunned, horrified silence. Somewhere a champagne glass slipped and shattered on the floor. Nobody moved. Nobody dared to speak. Grace dropped to her knees in front of her daughter, gathering her into her arms, her hands trembling as she checked to make sure Amara hadn't been hurt by the blades, only her dress. Amara buried her face into her mother's shoulder, sobbing. "Why did she cut my dress, Mommy? Why did she do that?" Amara cried. Grace held her tighter, tears streaming down her own face, but she could not find the words. What do you say to a 6-year-old who just learned, in the cruelest way possible, that some people cannot stand to see someone else shine? A few brave guests began whispering, "This is insane. Did she really just do that to a child? Someone needs to say something." But nobody stepped forward. Nobody wanted to embarrass the woman who was about to become the lady of this mansion. Fear and status kept every mouth shut. Vanessa simply smoothed her golden gown, tossed her hair over her shoulder, and said, "Someone clean this mess up," gesturing toward the fabric scraps on her marble floor, as if she hadn't just shattered a child's heart in front of 40 witnesses. If you have ever seen someone abuse their power over people who could not fight back, you understand the anger building right now. Stories like this remind us why it matters to stand up for the ones who cannot stand up for themselves. If this story is already stirring something in your chest, hit that subscribe button right now, because what happens next in this house is going to change everything, and you will not want to miss a single second of it. Grace scooped Amara into her arms and carried her toward the staff quarters at the back of the house, her legs shaking with every step. She sat her daughter down on the small bed in the tiny room they shared during long shifts and gently examined the ruined dress, running her fingers over the jagged cuts. "I'm sorry, baby," Grace whispered, rocking her daughter back and forth. "I'm so sorry." "Am I ugly, Mommy?" Amara asked through hiccuping sobs. "Is that why she cut it, because I looked bad?" Grace's heart shattered into 1,000 pieces at that question. She pulled back and cupped her daughter's face in her hands. "No, baby, never. You are beautiful. You are perfect. Some people just can't stand to see a light shine brighter than their own, and that's not your fault. That's never, ever your fault." But deep inside, Grace felt something she had never felt before in 8 years of working in that house. Not sadness, not humiliation. Rage. A quiet, burning rage that settled into her bones like fire. Meanwhile, back at the party, the music slowly resumed, though the mood had curdled into something tense and uncomfortable. Guests spoke in hushed voices, glancing toward the kitchen door every few minutes. Vanessa acted as if nothing had happened, laughing loudly, refilling her champagne, soaking in whatever attention she could reclaim. She had no idea that one of the guests, a young woman named Priya who worked as an assistant event planner, had quietly pulled out her phone the moment the scissors came out. She had recorded the entire thing, every cut, every cruel word, every tear on Amara's face. Priya's hands trembled as she watched the video back in the bathroom, locking the door behind her. She knew exactly what this footage meant. She also knew exactly whose eyes it needed to reach. She sent it straight to Richard Cole. At that exact moment, Richard was seated in a private jet somewhere over the Atlantic, finalizing paperwork for a deal worth hundreds of millions of dollars. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number, forwarded through his assistant's line with a single line of text. "Sir, I think you need to see this before you land. It's about tonight's party." Richard almost ignored it. He was exhausted, and business messages rarely felt urgent enough to interrupt a signature in progress. But something about the tone made him pause. He opened the video. 30 seconds in, his face went pale. By the 1-minute mark, his jaw was clenched so tight his assistant sitting beside him actually flinched. He watched Vanessa, the woman he was supposed to marry in 4 months, take scissors to a terrified little girl's dress out of pure jealousy, while a room full of adults stood by and said nothing. Richard did not raise his voice. He did not throw his phone. He simply turned to his assistant and said in a low, controlled tone that was somehow more frightening than shouting, "Change the flight plan. We're landing tonight." Something inside this man, known across the business world for being calm, calculated, and unshakable, had just cracked wide open. Not because someone challenged one of his deals. Not because someone tried to cheat him in business. But because a child, an innocent 6-year-old child, had been humiliated in his own home, wearing his own money, breathing his own air, and nobody had protected her. If you've ever waited for karma to arrive for someone who truly deserved it, you already know that feeling building in your chest right now. Make sure you're subscribed, because the next part of this story is the moment everyone at that party will remember for the rest of their lives, and you do not want to look away from what's coming. Back at the mansion, the party continued for another 2 hours. Vanessa danced. Vanessa laughed. Vanessa accepted gift after gift, completely unaware that a storm was flying straight toward her at 600 miles per hour. Grace had managed to calm Amara down enough to get her to sleep, humming an old lullaby her own mother used to sing to her, decades ago in a much smaller, much simpler home. She sat on the edge of the bed long after Amara's breathing steadied, staring at the ruined red dress folded on the chair beside her. She thought about quitting. She thought about packing their things that very night and never coming back. But she also thought about rent, about bills, about the fact that finding another job that paid this well would take months she didn't have. She felt trapped, and trapped is a feeling that can crush even the strongest hearts. Around 11 at night, the roar of a car engine cut through the quiet outside. Not just any car. The unmistakable, deep growl of Richard Cole's private vehicle, the one usually reserved for airport pickups when he returned from long trips unexpectedly. Grace's ears perked up instantly. He wasn't supposed to be back until next week. Inside the mansion, the party guests barely noticed at first, too caught up in laughter and champagne. But then the front door swung open with a force that made the chandelier above it tremble slightly. Richard Cole walked in, still in his travel suit, tie loosened, eyes scanning the room with an intensity that silenced every conversation within seconds. Vanessa turned, startled, her champagne glass frozen halfway to her lips. "Richard, baby, you're early. I thought you weren't coming back until." "Where is she?" Richard said, his voice cutting clean through the music, which the DJ quickly killed upon sensing the shift in the air. "Where's who?" Vanessa asked, laughing nervously, glancing around at the confused guests. "The little girl," Richard said. "Grace's daughter, where is she right now?" The color drained from Vanessa's face. Someone in the crowd whispered, "Oh no." Richard held up his phone, the video still paused on the screen, Amara's tear-streaked face frozen in the frame for the entire room to see. "I want everyone here to look at this," he said, turning slowly in a circle so every guest could see the screen. "I want you all to see exactly what happened in my house tonight while I was gone." He pressed play. The room listened in horrified silence as Amara's small voice echoed through the phone speaker. "That's my dress. Mommy, that's my dress." Followed by the unmistakable sound of scissors slicing fabric and Vanessa's cold, cruel laughter underneath it all. Several guests covered their mouths in shock. Others turned away, unable to watch a second time, now that they understood the full weight of what they had witnessed earlier and chosen to ignore. Vanessa's mouth opened and closed, searching desperately for an excuse. "Richard, it wasn't like that. She was getting too much attention and I just wanted to." "You cut a 6-year-old's dress with scissors," Richard said, his voice shaking now, not with sadness, but with barely restrained fury. "Because adults at my party were being kind to a child." Because a little girl looked beautiful in a 2-year-old dress her mother saved up to buy her. And you stood there and destroyed it in front of 40 grown adults, and not a single one of you stopped her. He turned his gaze slowly across the room, meeting the eyes of guest after guest, watching them shrink under the weight of his disappointment. Powerful men who negotiated million-dollar contracts without blinking now stared at their shoes like scolded children. I built this house, Richard continued, with the belief that the people inside it would treat each other with basic human decency. I was wrong tonight. I was very, very wrong. Vanessa's engagement ring caught the light as she reached out toward him, panic flooding her voice. Richard, please, I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking clearly. I had too much champagne, Take it off, Richard said quietly. What? The ring, take it off, right now. In front of everyone, the same way you humiliated that child in front of everyone. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Vanessa's hands trembled as she slid the diamond ring off her finger, tears now streaming down her own face, though these tears earned far less sympathy than the ones she had caused just hours earlier. Richard took the ring from her open palm, closed his fingers around it, and turned away without another word. If you believe that true justice always finds a way to arrive, even when it takes its time, this is the moment you have been waiting for. Hit subscribe now if karma catching up to cruelty is exactly the kind of story that keeps you coming back, because there is still one more twist waiting for you before this story ends. Richard walked straight through the crowd toward the staff quarters at the back of the house, his footsteps echoing with purpose. He knocked gently on Grace's door. When she opened it, eyes red and swollen from crying, cradling her sleeping daughter's ruined dress in her lap, Richard's stern expression softened into something gentler, something almost fatherly. Grace, he said quietly, I am so sorry. I should have been here. This should have never happened to your daughter in my home. Grace's voice cracked. She's just a baby, Mr. Cole. She didn't do anything wrong. She just wore her favorite dress. I know, Richard said, and I promise you this will never happen again, not to her, not to you. The next morning, the entire town seemed to already know what had happened, words spreading through group chats and phone calls faster than any headline could travel. Richard Cole publicly ended his engagement to Vanessa, releasing a short statement that simply read, "Character matters more than beauty. I choose to build my life around people who lift others up, not tear them down." Vanessa's carefully built social image crumbled within days. Invitations dried up. Friends who once fought for her attention suddenly stopped calling. The very community that once admired her for her beauty now saw clearly what had always been underneath it. As for Grace, Richard insisted she and Amara move into a proper guest suite within the mansion, no longer treated as staff to be tucked away in the back, but as people deserving of respect and comfort. He personally paid for a brand new wardrobe for Amara, including, of course, a beautiful new red dress, even more stunning than the one that had been destroyed. When Amara first tried it on and spun around in front of the mirror, her laughter returned in full, bright, and unbroken, as if the cruelty of that night had never touched her at all. Grace stood in the doorway watching her daughter's joy return, tears in her eyes again, but this time they were tears of relief. Because sometimes, the people who try to dim a child's light only end up proving just how bright that light truly was all along. This story is a powerful reminder that kindness and cruelty always leave a mark, one that eventually comes back around to those who caused it. If this story touched your heart today, if it made you feel something real, do not scroll away without hitting that subscribe button. Because stories like this one, stories about justice, about protecting the innocent, about karma finally arriving right on time, are exactly what we bring you every single day. Leave a comment below and tell us what part of this story moved you the most, because your voice matters just as much as this story does. Thank you for watching until the very end, and we will see you in the next one.